Hi church, it's Kevin Palmer here. I am going to be doing a daily devotional today. So I've called it Where Two or More Are Gathered. So I'm going to read to you from Matthew 18, and it's just one verse, verse 20. It says this: For where two or three are gathered in my name, there am I among them. So we're in strange times, isolation. Some people are completely on their own. Others are with their families. And it's a really strange time. But as I was thinking about this, I felt that God wanted to encourage us to keep in contact with one another. And to keep that two or three gathered together sort of mentality in our mind. It was great on Sunday to see over 600 people had tuned into the live stream church service, and it was also great that 33 people, I think, it was 33 people on the early morning prayer meeting between 8 and 9, just getting together. And this this sort of time that we're in really reflects on some of the prophetic words that were spoken about last year. So last year I was in Greece. I had the privilege of being with our leaders and going to Greece to a conference. And one of several of, in fact, masses of words came about this being a new era. And at first, if I'm honest, I didn't really take it too seriously. But now on reflection, I'm thinking, wow, how things have changed. And even the fact that you're listening to this and seeing me on video today shows us that. So I had looked back through the notes that I'd kept, and one of the first meetings that we had, there was a sermon that was preached, and really I want to give you an insight into really what was said. I'll talk you through just a few of the things that they spoke about. Now, the first one, or one of the items that came up, was that they spoke about having a clear understanding of our prophetic call. So I was thinking about the corporate church and how we want to resource and release people. And then I've also been thinking about prophetic words that I've had personally, and me and Sarah have had as my wife. And I thought this is a good time for us to maybe sit down and reflect on some of those prophetic words that God has given us, and maybe to think again and look at them again and think, and just to understand how it is that God can use us at this time, and the things that he's put within us and the things that he's called us to. The second thing that they spoke about was a willingness and a courage to think differently. So this is something that we're having to do anyway. We're having to do things differently, think differently. And I was particularly struck by the fact that, video conferencing is now becoming a part of our daily lives. And sometimes we have to have a willingness and the courage to actually download an app, dial into a meeting, and meet up with people. Sometimes, we don't know how to mute the microphone, we don't know how the volume works, we don't know how the camera works, don't know how to focus things in. But it's almost like we need to have a willingness and a courage to just step forward and say, right, I'm going to do these things anyway, I'm going to learn how to do it. And it leads into the third point, which says an openness to learn from others. Now, it's really hard to ask for help from other people, but sometimes other people can do things better than we can, or they understand things better than we can. And I think sometimes we just have to step out and say, can you help me at this time? And there's a lot of people who need help. And the fourth point, don't worry, there's only one more after this, but the fourth point that they spoke about was, who can we release? So for this one, or how can we release as well, I think is probably a good thing to speak about. We've all been given different gifts, and we've all got different abilities, and we've all got a way in which we can help our fellow man along in life's journey. And in that, God works. But I wanted to just take us to really Corinthians. So this is the first book of Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 4. And I just want to read this to you. It says, "Now there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are a variety of service, but the same Lord. And there are a variety of activities, but it is the same God who empowers them all in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good." So I love that, the common good. "For one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healing by the one Spirit. To another the working of miracles. To another prophecy. To another the ability to distinguish between spiritual gifts, between spirits. To another various kinds of tongues. To another the interpretation of tongues. All of these are empowered by one and the same Spirit, who apportions to each one individually as he wills." So my encouragement really is, let's stir ourselves. Let's look at the gifts that God's given us. Let's look at the prophetic words that God has put into us. And let's look to help our fellow man and each other. And in it, really, it takes me to the last point of this devotional. And this was the last point that they spoke about in Greece last year in this particular sermon. It says, have an expectancy of the supernatural. And what I've written here is this. As we come together, even though we're apart, God is there, right in the midst of it, working out his purposes through us and through his Spirit. That's been great because I've spoken to quite a few people. There are still people I need to speak to. But what it is when I hear that people are talking to one another through WhatsApp or through technology basically, that they're getting encouragement, that they're finding peace, that they're getting joy. So this is my encouragement. Let's continue meeting together, even if it is only where 2 or 3 of us can get together. And let's be expectant of the supernatural. Hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoyed this devotional. Hope to see you again soon. Okay, bye.